When were your prayers answered and delivered so much more? For me, it happened after my mom passed away. I moved back home to take care of my dad. Every day, I begged God to just let him go. He was 72, too old to live on his own, and I already had 2 kids to raise. But family is family, so I tried to handle it all. I dropped my kids at school, went to Dad's place to make him breakfast, cleaned while he sat watching TV, and listened to him complain that the eggs were too runny. Then I rushed to my part-time job at the pharmacy, picked up his prescriptions on my lunch break, grabbed my kids after school, and took them back to his house so I could cook his dinner. Not once did Dad thank me. He'd grunt when I set food in front of him and crank up the TV. My kids did homework at the kitchen table while I scrubbed his bathroom and sorted his pills into weekly boxes. Some nights I was so tired I almost fell asleep standing up washing dishes. The worst part was Thursday nights when his friends came over for beer and football. A bunch of old men who acted like they were still 20. They made nasty comments about my body when I brought them snacks. One even grabbed me once. I looked to Dad, hoping he'd say something. Instead, he laughed and said, "She's built just like her mom. God, I miss that woman." When they left, Dad got mean. He called me fat, said I was a terrible cook, told me Mom would be ashamed of how lazy I was. Once, he even threw his dinner plate at the wall because the meatloaf was too dry. My kids stood in the doorway scared while I cleaned up the mess. But I kept showing up every day, cooking, cleaning, paying his bills with my own money because his pension wasn't enough. I was exhausted, but I thought, you don't walk away from family. Then came the night everything changed. His friends were over, drinking harder than usual because their team was winning. I was carrying more beer when Dad snatched a bottle from me, yelled that I was too slow, and smashed it over my head. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, bleeding and soaked in beer. My head throbbed. Dad stood over me looking annoyed, and said, "Get up and change my diaper before I have my buddies rough you up." That was it, my breaking point. I stood up, dizzy, looked at him, and realized this wasn't my father anymore, just a bitter old man who treated me like a servant. I walked out the door, blood still in my hair, went home, hugged my kids, and decided I was done. 3 years of my life wasted on someone who didn't care if I lived or died. For a whole week, I didn't go to his house. I ignored his calls and angry voicemails calling me selfish and ungrateful. My kids were happier, and I finally started sleeping. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Then the hospital called. Dad had fallen down the stairs and broken his hip. He had to crawl to the neighbor's house for help. The doctor said he'd lost feeling in his lower back and would need constant medical care. The nurse asked if I'd be taking him home. I said no. He'd have to figure it out himself. I bought a month's worth of frozen dinners and dropped them at his house without stepping inside. That was all he was getting from me. No more cooking, no more cleaning, no more abuse. A few days later, he called crying. "Please come back. I'm sorry. I need you." I told him, "I was there for 3 years, and you treated me like nothing. Now you know what it feels like to be alone." And funny enough, once his drinking buddies realized they'd be the ones changing his diapers, they stopped coming around too. Full story on the channel. Link below, click now and watch what happened next.